always love when I can talk to Scott GULBRANSEN because he has the finger on the pulse of everything that's happening out in Vegas. And I'm telling you what, the Raiders have been making headlines. I do want to start, though, with something a little off the beaten path. You wrote something for Sportsnaut recently about Derek Carr's approach to social media, which I found kind of fascinating, especially now that we're living in this world where we're hyper-focused on athletes, and we've seen a number of different athletes be pretty candid about their mental health. Can you tell us a little bit about what you wrote for those who didn't get a chance to see it yet?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the piece I wrote was about Derek Carr, who tweeted over last weekend, sort of kind of an apology, but more of an explanation for people he's blocked on Twitter, saying, listen, I love you guys, but if you're negative and you're not bringing anything positive to the conversation, I'm just going to block you. You know, it's nothing personal per se. And he basically just set his boundaries. And it brought up to me the question, Carolyn, which is, how much can we expect from these men and women in athletics today, professional athletes particularly? How much do we expect from them? Do we constantly expect them to take criticism because they make lots of money online, when we can go behind anonymous Twitter handles and say terrible things about not only them on the field, but off the field, call them all sorts of dirty names and things? And listen, yes, you have to have a thick skin if you're in the public eye, but, you know, social media has brought on a special toxicity that I have not seen. And I guess it's a little bit of my maturity and age. But I look at it and Derek Carr, have I criticized him for play on the field in the past? Absolutely. Has he blocked me on Twitter? No. Has he blocked other reporters on Twitter? Yes. So there is some argument there that, hey, if you're in the game, you need to be able to take it. But Derek Carr made the point, Carolyn, that, you know what? He has to protect his peace. And I respect that as an athlete. He's focused on his job. And just like all of us, if somebody's not bringing something positive to your life and it's only negative, and you have the option of not listening to them, why wouldn't you? So I gave him kudos for that because, listen, you and I both, I'm sure, have had our share of doozies on social media, whether it was around opinions or a piece we did, whatever it could be. And enough is enough. The cesspool has to stop. There has to be better dialogue out there.
Well, help me understand, too, the vitriol that has been hurled in his direction from Raiders Nation. I mean, how intense has it been?
Well, it's been intense because he's just a polarizing figure in the fan base. And you and I have talked about that in the past. And it somewhat dumbfounds me because I understand from the perspective of watching any player, they have their moments where they don't perform their best. And so I understand fans particularly getting upset with that and saying, boy, if this player did this, then we could have won that game. But with Derek Carr, it's a special kind of weirdness amongst the fan base. There really is no middle. There tends to be people who love Derek Carr, love him as a guy, love him as a player. And then there tends to be people who think that he's weak, that he's soft, that he can't win football games, all of these other things. And so there's a constant fight going on. And you see this play out in social media. And then today, again, because we can spout off to famous people and to people who are out there, they can do that online. And a lot of people do it, and they say things that you wouldn't say to somebody face to face.
I certainly don't blame anybody, athlete, celebrity, or otherwise, from wanting to remove themselves from unwarranted negative criticism. I mean, I think it's asking a lot that you would have to tell anybody who's concerned about their mental health to kind of shrug it off and take it and know this is what it is. It comes with the territory. It feels like we're past that, especially at a time right now where I feel like everybody is just really sensitive to what we've been inundated with over the last couple of years. It was just a fascinating side note that I wanted to start with because I didn't really think about or have a real understanding of some of the things that he's been through. But now, as it relates to what we're going to see on the field next season, how has what the Raiders have done in free agency ultimately affected how good this team can be and how good he can potentially be next season?
Well, I'll tell you what, Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels have come in with guns blazing, right? I mean, they came in the first day of the legal tampering period. Raider fans were beside themselves, Carolyn, because nothing happened. They were like, wait a minute, the Raiders have all these needs and the Raiders haven't done anything. So they were ready to throw the new regime out already. And then, boy, day 3, when it ends and it moves into the NFL New Year, the Raiders make several moves. Of course, the trade of Davante Adams, going out and getting Chandler Jones as well to bolster that defense, that new defensive scheme that Patrick Graham brought with him from the Giants. So the Raider Nation, and particularly the team, what they've done to make these moves, they've addressed a lot of their key issues, Carolyn, that they had last year. They addressed the issues up front to get faster, to get more athletic. They addressed the wide receiver position. Not only did they sign Davante Adams, but they signed DeMarcus Robinson from the Kansas City Chiefs as well, among others. They've also addressed the defensive needs. They've signed interior defensive linemen. They went out and traded Yannick Ngakoue for Rock Ya-Sin, a really good young cornerback. They needed cornerbacks, and they're not done there either. So they are methodically, as you would expect someone who's understudied Bill Belichick, they are methodically going about addressing the concerns on that roster and making the Raiders perhaps the best team in the AFC West.
I was going to say, I mean, in an honest assessment, where do you think right now they stack up in the division? I mean, the moves that we've seen just a couple of days into free agency, the talent that is overloaded that particular division. I mean, it is going to be an absolute bar brawl, I feel like, to get to the top of that thing. People that I've spoken with here on Sportsnaut are mixed about who they actually feel is the top team in that division now, even after the arrival of Davante Adams and some of the other pieces that you mentioned. I mean, are they the best team in the division, in your opinion?
I think they can be. And I think that here's the issue. They still have to address the offensive line, which has major issues, especially on the right side, as we saw as Alex Leatherwood, the rookie last year, just didn't get it yet. That doesn't mean he's done. It doesn't mean he's a bust. He just didn't play well, and they moved him from tackle to guard. So there's a big question mark there. But if you go through every AFC team, yes, they all made incredible moves. Khalil Mack now in Los Angeles with the Chargers. You have Russell Wilson in Denver, right at quarterback there for the Broncos, who've been searching for that answer. So you look at this, and you talked about a bar brawl. It's a new black and blue division. So I think week by week, Carolyn, when we get up to this NFL season, the answer will be different for who is the best team in the AFC West. I can see a lot of these teams splitting with each other. One win at home, and you're going to see them beat up constantly on one another. So I think it depends. I think the Raiders aren't done in free agency. Neither are any of the AFC West teams, but I think they can be. And that at this point, you have to look at the AFC West and say, you know what, we probably won't know clearly till week 12 or later who's really going to win this thing, because all of these teams from the Chargers to the Chiefs have gotten better. Although the Chiefs, with the TYREEK Hill trade to Miami, I think get weaker. That offense becomes a lot less scary if you are an AFC West defense. So this thing could go either way, but I think the Raiders have a legitimate argument to say that they have improved the most and that they are the best team in the division.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thought, actually, that just occurred to me, that these guys are going to be absolutely taking it to each other week in and week out in the regular season. And we've looked at this division as by far and away the strongest, the most refined, however you want to define it, in the NFL heading into next season. But it's going to be a really, really long year. You mentioned Tyreek Hill. I do want to just touch on DeMarcus Robinson before we kind of let the receiver group go. Yeah. You know, he had some opportunities in Kansas City, but you could make the argument that he might be utilized better with the Raiders. I mean, how do you see him sort of fitting into this receiving core, this newly minted receiving core with the additions that they have?
Well, you see him as a 3 or a 4. I mean, if you look in Kansas City, right, he had the first 2 years, he had a much better go of it. And then McCole Hardman kind of unseated him last year, and he kind of fell back a little bit. But I'll tell you, look at DeMarcus Robinson through the course of his career. And even last year, he doesn't drop balls. Last year, he had 3 drop balls, so he is sure-handed. He's not going to be the deep threat, but I think what he's going to give the Raiders in that receiver room is a mature, he's a 6-year pro, spent all 6 years with Kansas City. He's going to give them steady hands. And I think to come in on a rotational basis and be that 4th or 5th receiver, depending what they're doing, he's going to have the opportunity, I think, to make big plays. It's just not going to be stacking up 1,700 yards or anything like that. What he's going to be able to do is give them that steady veteran presence that they've lacked in previous years.
And with Adams and the chemistry that he seemingly has, or at least thinks that he has with Derek Carr, I mean, he's been pretty public since all of this went down that he's really excited about this opportunity, the two of them getting back together, the chemistry that they have. Is there a practical sort of immediate benefit to that Josh McDaniels will get? I mean, obviously, Davante is just excited to be there. You get the sense that this is not only what made sense for him when things fell apart in Green Bay, but, a place that he's happy to be, that he wants to get in the locker room and get going. I mean, how much of that actually matters in addition to his raw talent?
Well, I think, you hear a lot of players talk about, hey, I've always thought about, I'd love to play for this team. But Davante Adams grew up in the Bay Area. Davante Adams shared pictures over the last 3 days of him in Raiders jerseys as a child playing youth football. He wanted to be a Raider. He grew up a Raiders fan. Charles Woodson was one of his favorite players. And so I think that's genuine. I think it really is. And when you hear him talk about playing for the Raiders, it is very, very genuine and deeply seated. I think he really feels good about it. Secondarily, with Derek Carr, the comfort level, to your question, Carolyn, I think that's huge, because if you look at quarterback to wide receiver, you look at the relationship he had with Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay, and he talked about it at the press conference when he was introduced as a Raider. He said, look, Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback to ever play the game. That's what his opinion was. So he had high praise for them, and they were always on the same page. They talked about that. If you read the last few years of interviews, Rodgers and Adams didn't often have to even communicate verbally to understand what they were going to do on a certain play. I think it'll take a little while to get there with Derek Carr, but remember, these two played college football together at Fresno State. The final year of Davante Adams' career at Fresno State, he had 24 touchdowns and nearly 1,700 yards, all thanks to the throws of Derek Carr. So these guys are close. They talked multiple times during the week, during the season, for their last 6 seasons. And so I think that for them to get on the same page, that comfort level is good. And that's huge for Derek Carr and the Raiders, because if you look at what Carr has done with his wide receivers, you look at Hunter Renfrow, who's been the most successful wide receiver that he's worked with. They have a very close relationship off the field. They play golf. They play video games together. And then you look at Davante Adams, that is a very close situation. Where Henry Ruggs, the rookie, when he came out of Alabama, they took a long time to develop. And of course, the tragedy happened and they didn't get to bring that to fruition. But it took them a long time. So I think, long answer to a short question, but I do think it's going to be a big deal and that they're going to be very comfortable to get go.
Yeah, no, interesting answer. And I will be curious to see how long it takes that telepathy to kind of develop. I think in some cases it's more natural than others. What I hope is that people don't put too much pressure on that relationship and their pre-existing relationship and expect something to click and happen right away, like that magical synergy that he had with, as he described it, the best to ever do it, in his opinion, in Aaron Rodgers. When we originally spoke before all these moves were made, you told me at the beginning that, Raider Nation was really kind of hesitant about Josh McDaniels, failed as a head coach in the past, and now he's here, and what's going to happen? Clearly, they have made some decisions that I would imagine leaves the fan base elated at this point heading into next year. Where is the temperature with the fan base around Josh McDaniels, just in his ability to now manage the pieces that they've put in place?
I think everybody's coming to the conclusion that, when you walk into a situation and you've spent the years that you've spent in New England and you can hold up that hand with all those rings, that it means something, and it means you learned kind of a process. You learned how to run an organization. And you hear a lot of comments, around saying, hey, guys who have rings are now running the show, so relax. You're starting to see people talk about, hey, maybe these guys know what they're doing. Yeah, they do. And so I think Raider Nation, with the early free agent moves and of course the Jones trade, before the Adams trade, everybody started to change their mind. The mood really changed, and everybody's thought was, wow, man, these guys, they actually know what they're doing. And then the Adams trade comes, and suddenly I think that was what just projected Raider Nation into honeymoon mode with both Josh McDaniels and, of course, the GM, Dave Ziegler. So they're all in a very good place. It's just unfortunate because I think Raider fans, if they could, they would start the season tomorrow because they're ready to go, even though the Raiders still have a lot of question marks they got to deal with. But everything is good in Raider Nation. It's kind of the most peaceful I think I've seen it in a long time.
Let's just end on Tyreek Hill because that's news of the day. And quite honestly, I don't know where you would rank this offseason among the wildest. It seems like with every day, with every week, we are hearing about some kind of bombshell deal that's being done. And now we know that Tyreek Hill, is going to Miami, wants to go to Miami. What is your kind of immediate analysis on why this happened and whether or not it makes sense?
Well, I think two things. Number one, I agree with you, Carolyn. I think this is the craziest offseason we've seen, and we've just got started, right? So to me, all of these quarterbacks moving, these these Hall of Fame names being moved, players that you would never consider a team trading are getting traded. Adams, Hill, and you have Russell Wilson in Washington going to Denver. All of these things happening is just and is shaking, I think, people and saying, wow, this is incredibly crazy. But if you look at the reasons why, I think it becomes more evident. Number one, and I have a surprise too. Number one is the salary cap. Because of the new TV deals, because of the rolling back of the salary cap during COVID, of course, because of revenues, now it's going back up by almost $38 million, the back of the checkbook math here. And so teams have more money. What's surprising to me about all of this is that you're just seeing these players go, and you're starting to see, despite great management by some teams of the salary cap, that when you go sign that generational quarterback like Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, guess what happens? You get a generational type wide receiver. You might not be able to hold on to them if you can't pay them. And so I think guys are opting out and saying, I got to get paid. This opportunity might not come along again. And so I'm willing to leave a situation where I've won a lot of games, and it's a great situation for me to go for the money. So now Tyreek Hill goes from having one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL in Patrick Mahomes, and who won a Super Bowl together, to Miami with Tua, where there's still a lot of question marks. So, it's shocking on so many levels.
Yeah, it really is. And it's an interesting trend, as you mentioned, kind of league wide. You're also seeing these quarterbacks kind of dictate their future in an entirely new way. And I think the salary cap does have a lot to do with some of the wilder moves that we've seen. Fascinating analysis. Scott, as always, great stuff from Raider Nation. Really have your finger on the pulse of what's going on out there. I can't wait for the season to get started, to be honest with you, because I want to see if this whole experiment works or not, but I feel like it's going to. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Carolyn, as always.